My name is Ethan Walker. I grew up in a small, sleepy town nestled in the heart of Nebraska, a place where everyone knows your name, your family's history, and even the mistakes you'd rather they forget. Life in towns like mine doesn't change much. The streets remain quiet except for the occasional high school football game or Sunday church bells echoing through the empty roads. It's the kind of place where dreams don't stretch too far past the horizon, and ambition often withers under the weight of routine. I never thought of myself as extraordinary. My days were simple and predictable, almost painfully so. I worked as a barista at a local cafe, Brew Haven, a cozy little shop tucked between the post office and the hardware store. My morning started early, the air thick with the comforting aroma of roasted coffee beans and the soft hum of conversations between neighbors who had known each other for decades. My hands moved on instinct, grinding beans, steaming milk, drawing patterns on cappuccinos for the regulars who always order the same thing. I liked the simplicity. I liked being needed without truly being known. But beneath the calm exterior, I was living in quiet isolation. I was gay. Something I didn't shout from the rooftops in a town where traditions ran deep and old prejudices still lingered in whispered conversations behind closed doors. I wasn't ashamed of who I was. I just didn't see the point in opening myself up to the judgment I feared would follow. Instead, I built walls, high, impenetrable, and silent. I lived alone in a modest one-bedroom house on the edge of town. Evenings were spent curled up on my worn-out sofa, flipping through TV channels I wasn't really watching, or reading books with pages I couldn't seem to finish. My phone rarely buzzed unless it was my mother, calling from across the state with her usual mix of love and concern, always ended with the words, "You should come visit soon, Thin." It's not good to be alone all the time, but alone felt safer. I had grown used to handling everything myself. If the sink leaked, I fixed it. If a light bulb went out, I climbed the ladder and replaced it without hesitation. Relying on others felt like setting myself up for disappointment. I had learned that lesson young. When my father walked out, leaving only a note that said, "I can't do this anymore," my mother's faith had carried her through that heartbreak. But I never found the comfort she did in prayer. I trusted what I could see, fix, and control. God didn't fit into that equation. That's why the night everything changed felt like just another page in the same repetitive story, until it wasn't. It was late, maybe close to midnight, when the porch light outside my front door burned out. The sudden darkness cast a strange shadow over the familiar space. I sighed, grabbed a replacement bulb, and fetched the old metal ladder from the garage. The chill of the autumn air brushed against my skin as I stepped outside, the cold biting just enough to make me shiver. This wasn't the first time I'd done this. I had fixed that light more times than I could count. The ladder creaked as I positioned it under the porch light, the worn metal groaning under my weight. My fingers wrapped around the cool glass of the bulb, twisting it loose with practiced ease. Then it happened. A subtle shift, almost imperceptible, a wobble, a moment of imbalance. My foot slipped. The ladder lurched forward with a sharp screech of metal against wood. The world tilted, and for a split second, time seemed to stretch. I remember the sickening drop, the helplessness that came as gravity took over. I crashed onto hard wooden boards with a force that knocked every breath from my lungs. Pain exploded through my back and neck, a jarring, electric agony unlike anything I had ever felt. But what scared me more wasn't the pain, it was the silence that followed. I couldn't move. My arms refused to respond. My legs felt like dead weights pinned to the earth. My eyes remained open, staring up at the dark, indifferent sky above me. Time became elastic, stretching into something unreal. Seconds felt like hours, or maybe it was the other way around. I don't remember losing consciousness, but I must have. What I do remember is what they told me later, that my neighbor, Mr. Carlson, had heard the crash from his living room. He found me sprawled across the porch, eyes wide but unblinking, breath shallow and uneven. He called 911 with trembling hands, his voice thick with panic. The paramedics arrived swiftly. The world around me blurred, lights flashing, voices shouting commands I couldn't understand. I wasn't awake to feel the rush of tires on a road or the sterile chill of the emergency room. My body was alive. Barely, But I was no longer there. I had left it behind. Hovering above, detached from the broken shell that once housed my spirit, I saw everything from a distance, like an audience watching a tragedy unfold on stage. The doctors worked frantically to stabilize me, their movements sharp with urgency. Machines beeped in rapid succession. Hands pressed against my chest, try to coax life back into the body that no longer felt like mine. And then I heard it, a voice, steady and grave. Time of death, 11:47 p.m. I was gone, but this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something far more profound. Before we move forward with this incredible journey, I'd love for you to become a part of our growing community. If this story is already pulling you in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more deeply moving stories that touch the soul. And here's something special. Leave a comment with your name and city below. In today's video, we'll reveal the lucky viewers who were selected to receive a personalized message at the end of this episode. Imagine hearing your name mentioned in front of thousands of viewers. A little moment to shine and be part of something truly meaningful. If you want a chance to be featured in the next video, don't forget to comment with your name, city, and leave a like. Let's keep this connection alive and share this journey together. Now, let's continue, because what happened next will change everything. The moment they declared me dead, everything changed. I expected darkness, the kind that swallows you whole and leaves nothing behind. No thoughts, no feelings, no remnants of the life you once had. But instead, there was a strange stillness, like the calm before a storm or the quiet breath the world takes before something irreversible happens. I wasn't in my body anymore. Hovering above the sterile chaos of the hospital room, I could see everything with crystal clarity. My body, lay motionless on the table, pale and broken, wires tangled around my chest. The machines beside me screamed their steady alarms, each beep a cruel reminder of a life slipping away. I watched the doctors and nurses move with frantic precision, their faces lined with exhaustion and quiet despair. But I felt nothing. No pain, no fear, just a weightless detachment, like I was observing someone else's tragedy. The person lying there wasn't me anymore. It was just a shell, an empty vessel that had served its purpose. Then everything shifted. The room around me began to blur, the bright white lights dissolving into an endless void of shadows and silence. The sounds of machines, the hurried voices, and even the pounding of my own heart faded into nothingness. I was alone, truly alone, for the first time in my life. At first, I thought it was death. This was what everyone feared, an endless black void stretching into eternity. But then came the whispers, soft at first, like wind rustling through dry leaves, growing louder with each passing second. The voices overlapped, weaving together in a chilling chorus that I couldn't quite understand. Word became clearer, sharp, cutting, undeniable. He never believed. He pushed us away. He thought he didn't need anyone. Each word felt like a blade, slicing through every wall I had built around myself over the years. The voices weren't angry. They were disappointed. Every judgment, every mistake, every time I let fear rule my heart, echoed to the void around me. I wanted to scream, to deny their truth, but how could I? These voices knew me better than I knew myself. Then came the fall. It wasn't falling the way you'd imagine. No rush of air, no sense of motion, just a crushing, relentless pull dragging me deeper into the abyss. The darkness thickened, pressing against me from every direction. Panic surged in me like fire in my veins, but there was no escape, no body to fight with, no breath to catch. Just the unbearable sensation of falling into nothingness. I tried to call out for help, for my mother, for anyone, but no sound came. Just when I thought the void would consume me entirely, a light appeared. Faint at first, like the smallest flicker of a dying candle. It pierced the darkness, steady and unwavering, a soft glow that seemed to pulse with warmth and hope. I focused on it, desperate for something, anything to hold on to. The voices began to fade, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace I couldn't understand. The pull of the void weakened as the light grew stronger, brighter, more alive than anything I had ever known. And then I saw him. At first, it was just a silhouette, tall, graceful, surrounded by an aura so powerful it felt like standing at the center of a rising sun. The figure moved closer, and the details became clear. A man dressed in robes of pure white, his presence radiating love so profound it brought me to the edge of tears. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw everything. Every mistake, every regret, every hidden wound I had buried deep inside myself. But there was no judgment, only compassion. The light around him wasn't just brightness. It was alive. It pulsed with energy that seeped into the very essence of who I was, dissolving every fear, every ounce of doubt I had ever clung to. I tried to speak, but the words caught in the emptiness that had once been my throat. Then he spoke, and his voice wasn't just sound. It was a feeling, a vibration that echoed through the very core of my soul. Ethan, just my name. But it wasn't just a name. It was a recognition, a call, as if he had known me before I even knew myself. The warmth intensified, wrapping around me like the arms of someone who had been waiting for me to come home. Tears, if I could have cried, would have poured from me. Every wall I had ever built around my heart crumbled in that moment. I knew who this was. I didn't need anyone to tell me. I didn't need proof. I was standing in the presence of Jesus. The realization didn't bring fear. It didn't bring guilt. Only love, a love so pure, so consuming. It left no room for anything else. I wanted to speak. I wanted to ask why. Why me? Why now? But before I could gather the courage to form the words, the space around us shifted. The darkness that had once surrounded me melted away, replaced by something vast and endless. I looked down. Beneath me, through a translucent veil, I saw Earth, my hospital room, the doctor still working desperately, my neighbor pacing the hallway, wringing his hands in helpless anxiety. And I saw my mother. She was sitting in her small kitchen, clutching her phone in one hand, a photograph of us in the other, her lips moving in silent prayer. I turned back to him, Jesus, and suddenly I understood I wasn't meant to stay here. Not yet. But why had I been brought here in the first place? Before I could ask, he placed a hand on my shoulder, and the warmth of his touch burned through me with a gentle intensity. There is more for you to do, he said. And just like that, the light began to fade, pulling me back toward the life I thought I had left behind. Not even close. But this wasn't the end. The warmth of his touch lingered long after the light began to fade. It wasn't just a physical sensation. It was something deeper, woven into the very fabric of my soul. As the brilliance of that sacred space dimmed, I felt myself being pulled back to a reality I thought I'd left behind. But reality wasn't what it used to be. The darkness returned, but this time it wasn't cold or empty. Instead, it felt like a bridge, a space between where I had been and where I was going. I wasn't falling anymore. I was moving with purpose, drawn by something greater than fear or gravity. Every second stretched into eternity, and yet it all seemed to happen in the blink of an eye. Then the pain returned. It hit me like a tidal wave. Every broken bone, every torn muscle, every wound that my body had endured surged through me all at once. My eyes snapped open, and I gasped for breath as if I were drowning. The sterile brightness of fluorescent hospital lights cut through the haze, and the sound of machines beeping in frenzied patterns filled my ears. I was back. I couldn't move. The weight of my own body was overwhelming, pinning me down like an anchor. My chest burned with every shallow breath, and my heart pounded against my ribcage like it was trying to escape. The voices around me were different now. No longer the ethereal whispers in the void, but human, panicked, alive. He's back. We've got a pulse. A rush of footsteps echoed to the room as nurses and doctors sprang into action, disbelief coloring every word. One nurse's voice cracked as she called out for assistance, her shock thinly veiled beneath her professionalism. The doctor in charge leaned over me, his eyes wide and disbelieving. Ethan, can you hear me? I tried to respond, but my throat was raw, like sandpaper scraping against itself. My lips moved, but no sound came out. I was trapped in a body that wasn't ready to welcome me back. You were gone for 8 minutes, the doctor whispered, almost to himself. His voice trembled with something that sounded like awe. No pulse, no brain activity. We lost you. 8 minutes. It didn't seem possible. 8 minutes without oxygen should have left me brain dead, a shell of the person I once was. And yet, every part of me was aware, more alive than I had ever felt before, because I had been somewhere else. And that place had changed me. The hours that followed blurred into endless tests and whispered conversations. Nurses moved in and out of my room like ghosts, their eyes filled with curiosity and fear. I could hear them speaking just outside the door, trying to make sense of what had happened. There's no way he should be awake right now. It's like a miracle. But I wasn't thinking about miracles. I was thinking about the light, about him. I closed my eyes and tried to hold on to the memory of his voice, the warmth of his presence. But already it was fading like a dream upon waking. All that remained was the echo of his final words. There's more for you to do. Lying there, surrounded by the hum of machines and the quiet shuffle of footsteps, I realized something terrifying. I couldn't go back to the person I was before. The days dragged on with the monotony of hospital life. For drips, blood tests, endless questions from doctors who didn't believe what their eyes were seeing. I should have been grateful to be alive, but the truth weighed heavily on me. I had been dead. I had seen what lay beyond. And now, I carried the burden of knowing that death wasn't the end. It was a doorway, but to what? Each night, as the hospital wing settled into silence, I stared at the ceiling and thought about the voices in the void. Their accusations still haunted me. He never believed. He pushed us away. They weren't wrong. I had spent my entire life building walls around myself, hiding behind sarcasm, independence, and fear. I had kept everyone at a distance because it was easier than risking rejection, easier than admitting that maybe I wasn't as strong as I wanted to be. But now I couldn't hide. Not from him. Not from myself. On the third night after I woke up, something changed. I was alone in my room, the moonlight filtering through the half-closed blinds, casting pale shadows on the floor. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound, steady and constant, and then I felt it, the warmth, subtle at first, like a breath against my skin. I turned my head toward the corner of the room, and my heart froze. A figure stood there, bathed in soft, golden light. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. I knew. It wasn't Jesus, not this time, but the presence was just as familiar, just as powerful. An angel, perhaps, or something even more profound, sent to remind me that my journey wasn't over. The fear that had gripped me since my return loosened its hold. I wasn't alone. I never had been. The figure remained for only a moment before fading into the shadows, leaving behind a warmth that lingered in the air long after it was gone. I closed my eyes and whispered the only words I could manage. I'm ready. But deep down, I knew I wasn't, because the hardest part wasn't dying. The hardest part was living with the knowledge of what came next, and the responsibility that came with being sent back. What was I supposed to do now? The answer was coming. I just didn't realize how soon. The days passed in a blur of fluorescent lights, sterile walls, and the quiet hum of machines that monitored every beat of my heart. Despite the constant presence of doctors and nurses, I felt isolated, trapped in a space that existed somewhere between life and death, with no clear way forward. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. The light, the warmth, him. The memory of his voice echoed to my mind like a melody I couldn't forget. There is more for you to do. The words felt less like an instruction and more like a mission, a reason for my return. But what that mission was, I couldn't yet understand, until the vision started. It happened late one night, as I drifted in and out of restless sleep. My room was dark, save for the pale glow of moonlight creeping through the blinds. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was steady, a reminder that I was alive, even if I didn't feel entirely present. And then everything changed. I wasn't in my hospital bed anymore. I was somewhere else. The air was thick with silence, an overwhelming quiet that felt less like absence and more like anticipation. Around me stretched an endless space, neither light nor dark, just infinite. Colors shimmered faintly on the edges of my vision. Hues I couldn't describe, like reflections of emotions rather than physical shades. And then I felt it, a presence. I turned, though I wasn't sure if I had a body to turn with. And there he was again, Jesus. But this time he wasn't alone. Surrounding him were figures cloaked in radiant light, their forms both human and beyond human, shimmering with an energy so pure it made my heart ache. Their faces were indistinct, not because they lacked features, but because they were too beautiful, too real for my human mind to fully comprehend. They were watching me, waiting. Why am I here? I wanted to ask, but no words came. Instead, Jesus extended his hand. The moment our connection formed, visions poured into me, images flashing so quickly I could barely process them. I saw faces, some familiar, some strangers, each one carrying their own burdens, their own pain. I saw a moment in my own life where I had turned away from love, where fear had dictated my actions instead of compassion. I saw the consequences of my choices, the times I had ignored someone's suffering because it was easier to look away, the words I had left unsaid because vulnerability felt like weakness. And then I saw something else, a future, a path I hadn't yet walked, a journey not defined by fear but by purpose. The overwhelming truth hit me like a wave crashing over my entire being. My life wasn't just about me. I had been sent back to help others find the light I had seen, not through grand gestures or miracles, but through kindness, through love, through reminding people that they were never alone, even in their darkest moments. You have work to do, Ethan. His voice was gentle but firm, resonating through every corner of my soul. Tell them what you've seen. And just like that, the vision faded. I woke up with tears streaming down my face, though I didn't remember starting to cry. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, warm and soft. But it wasn't just light anymore, it was a reminder, a sign that the world I had glimpsed wasn't a dream, but a reality waiting for me to share. For the first time since I'd returned, I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready to speak, ready to tell my story. Because the world needed to know there's more to life than what we see. If this story has touched something deep inside you, I want to invite you to be part of this incredible community we're building together. Your journey is just as important as mine, and I'd love for you to join us. Leave a comment below with your name and the city you're watching from. In the next video, I'll be giving a personal shout out to some of you. Imagine hearing your name in front of thousands of people and being part of something truly special. And don't forget to like this video. It might seem like a small gesture, but it helps us reach more people who need to hear these messages of hope and transformation. Also, make sure to watch the video until the very end. I'll be announcing the viewers who were selected to receive a special personalized message today. You might be one of the lucky ones to have your name mentioned and be part of something truly memorable. Together, let's spread the light. This is just the beginning. The day I left the hospital, the world felt different. It wasn't that the sky was any bluer or that the air smelled sweeter. The sun still rose with its usual quiet authority, and the wind still rustled through the trees with the same gentle hum. But I wasn't the same. I could feel it in every breath. I had been to the edge of everything, stood on the threshold of eternity, and now every second of life felt heavier, sharper, more real. The sounds of car engines, the flutter of leaves against the sidewalk, even the distant murmur of voices on the street, they weren't just background noise anymore. They were reminders of the life I'd been given back. But with that life came a weight I wasn't prepared for. Tell them what you've seen. His words echoed inside me like a command etched into my soul, impossible to ignore. I didn't need anyone to explain what them meant. It was everyone. Every person wandering through their days, unaware how thin the veil was between this world and what lay beyond. I had been sent back for a reason. But how was I supposed to do that? The first night home was the hardest. The familiar scent of coffee grounds and the soft creak of the floorboards under my feet should have comforted me. Instead, they felt like echoes of a life that no longer fit. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my hands, at the faint bruises from 4 lines and the scars the doctors said would eventually fade. But I knew better. The real scars weren't visible. My phone buzzed on a nightstand, dragging me out of my thoughts. It was a message from my mom. Just checking in. Call me if you need anything. Love you. I wanted to respond, to tell her everything, to share what I had seen, the places I had been, the presence I had felt. But the word stuck in my throat. How do you tell someone that you died? That you met Jesus? That you've been given a second chance not because of who you were, but because of what you still needed to do? Instead, I typed 2 simple words. I'm okay. But I wasn't. The visions didn't stop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Faces of people I didn't know, each weighed down by their own invisible burdens. Some were crying, others screaming silently into the void of their loneliness, their pain wrapped tightly around them like chains. I felt their despair as if it were my own, and each time his voice would return, steady and soft, help them see the light. I didn't understand how I was supposed to do that. I wasn't a preacher, a saint, or even particularly spiritual before all this happened. I was just me, a barista from Nebraska who had spent most of his life running from anything that required real vulnerability. How could I possibly be the one to share this message? A week passed before I stepped outside again. I walked the familiar streets of my small town, every crack in the sidewalk and every fading storefront sign whispering memories of the person I used to be. But nothing about this walk felt ordinary. People stopped me along the way, offering cautious smiles and awkward questions. Heard you had a close call, Ethan. Glad you're still with us, man. I nodded politely, offering empty reassurances, but inside, I felt like a stranger wearing my own skin. It wasn't until I reached the park that I finally stopped pretending. I sat down on a worn wooden bench beneath the shade of an old oak tree, letting the weight of everything I had experienced settle over me. The wind stirred to the leaves above, carried with it the faintest trace of warmth, a presence I couldn't see but knew was there. I don't know how to do this, I whispered into the emptiness. And then, as if in response, the memories flooded back, the kindness of strangers, the forgiveness I'd been too afraid to ask for, the light I had seen beyond the veil. Maybe that's where I needed to start, not with grand gestures or public declarations, but with love. The next day, I returned to Brewhaven. It felt strange to be back behind the counter, measuring coffee grounds and steaming milk as if nothing had changed. But everything had. The regulars came in with their usual orders, their familiar small talk filling the air. But for the first time, I really listened, to their stories. The exhaustion in the eyes of the single mom balancing 2 jobs. The sadness beneath the smile of the old man who always ordered chamomile tea and sat alone in the corner. I didn't preach. I didn't mention heaven or Jesus, or the mission I didn't fully understand yet. I just cared, and slowly, something shifted. People began to open up, sharing pieces of themselves in ways they never had before. Little by little, I realized that maybe I didn't need to tell them what I'd seen, not directly. Maybe I just needed to be the reminder that hope still existed, that light still shined in the darkest places. And maybe, just maybe, that was where my mission truly began. Not with the words I spoke, but with the love I showed. The kind of love I had felt in the presence of something greater than myself. The kind of love that could change everything. The days turned into weeks, and little by little, my life began to find a rhythm again. But it wasn't the same melody I had known before. Each morning, as I opened the cafe, I felt a quiet sense of purpose stirring inside me. One that went beyond just making the perfect cup of coffee or ensuring the pastries were fresh. Every interaction now carried weight, even if it seemed small from the outside. I had stopped searching for grand, life-altering moments. The truth was, they were already happening. In the small acts of kindness exchanged across a countertop, in the genuine conversations shared between strangers who might otherwise never speak. But the visions didn't stop. Every night, as sleep crept in, I was pulled back to the faces I'd seen during my time between life and death, those shadowed by loneliness, burdened by regret, silently begging for a glimmer of hope. And every night, I felt that same unspoken call echo inside me. Tell them, help them see the light. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold, I found myself walking toward the edge of town. There was a small, forgotten chapel there, old wooden steps worn smooth by time, its bell long since silenced by rust and neglect. I had passed that place countless times before, never thinking twice about it. But that night, it pulled me in. I pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the fading light, streaming through the cracked stained glass windows, casting fractured rainbows across the empty pews. I sat in the back, letting the silence wrap around me like an old, familiar blanket. What am I supposed to do? I whispered into the emptiness. There was no booming voice from above, no sudden flash of clarity or divine answer. Just a thought, quiet and persistent. Be the light you saw. The next day, I returned to Brewhaven with a new resolve. I started small, writing simple notes on the coffee cups of regular customers. You matter more than you know. It's never too late to start again. You're stronger than you think. At first, it seemed silly, insignificant, even, but then the reaction started. A woman who always sat alone began smiling more often. A man who rarely spoke started sharing stories about his late wife. People began connecting, not just with me, but with each other. I realized then that this was my mission. It wasn't about preaching or convincing anyone of what I had seen. It was about reminding people that they were loved, that they weren't invisible, and that hope still existed, even in the quiet corners of everyday life. One evening, as I was closing up, a young man I barely knew lingered by the counter. His hands trembled as he spoke. Hey, I just want to say thanks for the note on my cup. I smiled, wiping down the counter. I'm glad it helped. It did. More than you know, he said, voice cracking with emotion. I was thinking about ending things that day, but your words, they reminded me that maybe I'm not as alone as I thought. My heart ached as I placed a hand on his shoulder. You're not alone, I said softly, and in that moment, I understood something deeper than anything I had learned before. The mission wasn't just about me telling my story. It was about making space for their stories too. This is why I continue sharing this journey with all of you. I'm not here because it's easy or because I expect anything in return. I'm here because these stories matter. Your stories matter. We don't make any money doing this. We do it because we believe in the power of connection, in the idea that no one should ever feel like they're facing the darkness alone. If this story has touched your heart, or if you've ever needed a reminder that you're not alone, I'd love for you to be part of this growing community. Subscribe to the channel and like this video. It might seem like a small thing, but it helps us share these messages with more people who need to hear them. Together, we can build something truly special, a place where light cuts through even the deepest darkness. Because the truth is, we're in this journey together, and the best is yet to come. The weeks turned into months, and though the days sometimes felt ordinary, I knew deep down that nothing about my life was ordinary anymore. Every interaction, every moment, every breath carried a weight of meaning I hadn't understood before. Life wasn't just a series of random events. It was a tapestry, each thread connected by unseen hands, weaving something far greater than I could comprehend. But one thing was clear, my mission wasn't over. One evening, as I locked at the cafe and stepped into the cool night air, the sky above seemed endless, each star a reminder of the vastness I had once glimpsed from the other side. The memories of that place, the light, the warmth, him, were never far from my mind. But instead of feeling overwhelming, they had become my guide. I understood now that sharing my experience wasn't about convincing anyone of what I had seen. It was about being a reminder that there's more beyond this life. Hope, love, grace. The next morning, something unexpected happened. As I opened the cafe, I found a letter tucked beneath the door. There was no name, no return address, just a simple note written in shaky handwriting. Your words saved my life. Thank you for reminding me that I matter. I stood there in the quiet of the empty shop, tears filling my eyes. This was why I was sent back. Not for fame, not for recognition, but for this. For every person who needed to know they weren't alone. For every heart on the brink of giving up. For every soul that needed to hear, you are loved. As I sat down that evening, reflecting on everything that brought me here, I realized something important. This wasn't the end of my journey. It was just the beginning. The visions had shown me that there were still people out there, lost in their own darkness, waiting for a sign of hope. And I was ready to be that sign. Tell them I would, not just through stories or words, but through every act of kindness, every moment of compassion, every reminder that no one is ever truly alone. And now, a special message for two amazing members of our community. Ruth Camomile from New Hallstein, Wisconsin. Your strength and kindness are an inspiration. You are a light in your own community. And I want you to know that your journey matters deeply. Never stop believing in the goodness that surrounds you. Joseph Cutterfellow from Philadelphia. You have the heart of a warrior and the spirit of someone destined for greatness. Your story isn't over yet, and incredible things are waiting for you just around the corner. Keep shining. And now, I want to invite you to take the next step with me. If this story has touched your heart, there's another message waiting for you. One that could reveal something truly life-changing. All you need to do is click on the video appearing on your screen right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Before you go, I'd love for you to help grow this beautiful community we're building together. Like this video and comment the word Amen below if you believe in the power of hope and want to continue being blessed on this journey. Your support helps us reach more people who need to hear these messages of love and light. Remember, this isn't the end. It's just the beginning of something extraordinary. I'll see you in the next video.